Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the KDI special lecture. My name is Byung-Gu Kim, an assistant professor here at KDIS. And today we have the honor of having two special guests, Professor Jeon and Professor Jeon, who will lead the discussions on today's theme, which is human-centered data science, which I think is a very critical subject, especially when the data science is on the rise. Professor Jeon is currently assistant professor at KAIST in School of Humanities and Computational Social Science. His research focuses on sociology of science and technology, environmental sociology, sociological theory, as well as qualitative methods and computational social science. Professor Jeon, he's currently a research scientist at Johns Hopkins University's SNF Agora Institute, but he was also the former faculty member of KDIS. I didn't have the honor to meet him in person because we didn't have the overlapping term, but I heard he was great. And also he previously worked for Code for America and has very many interesting research on urban and local politics, racial and ethnic politics, civic engagement, policy implementation, as well as data science, survey experiments, and multi-methods. I believe they're the perfect fit for today's theme. So if you're interested in this subject, please check out their CVs and make sure you follow their research. Since they are the experts in this area and I'm not, I'll try to make myself invisible and let them speak. So we will begin with Professor Jeon and then we will have the talk by Professor Jeon. Then we will have an open discussion to talk about not only their talks, but also in general about today's theme. Without further ado, let me introduce Professor Jeon and his talk. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Byung-Gu Kim. My name is Jeon. I'm an assistant professor of sociology at KAIST, School of Digital Humanities and Computational Social Sciences. First of all, I'm very grateful to have this opportunity today. Actually, this whole thing started by Professor Jeon Kim. I wrote a very short op-ed for some platform, and Professor Jeon Kim surprisingly read it because I assumed that nobody would read it anyway. But he found it interesting, and we started to chat with a Facebook Messenger about data and social good and our research focus, that kind of things. And then suddenly we decided to have this kind of meeting together to talk about some critical aspect of the relationship between data and social good. So that was the beginning of this everything. And I think that happened like 6 months ago or something. And now it is so grateful to see that this is really happening. So I will share my slide and continue. Today, my topic is entitled Behind the Data, Intricate Relationship Between the Data and Social Good. I have very simple goal with this presentation. My goal is to make you guys all think about some life cycle of data in more larger view, and think more critically, what do you mean by we have a data? And what do you mean by we have data that we can analyze together? So if we think about AI and data these days in South Korea, we see some fascinating news, some fancy things here and there happening. And I'm always so amazed to see new policies that are adopted by Korean government. Sometimes it looks very radical. Sometimes it looks like too much symbolic. But the point is that it looks like our Korean government has some fascination about AI and data, as if AI and data itself guarantees some social progress and social good. So like raising a million more AI professions and enhancing the AI industry for Korean society. And the prediction that there will be a lack of AI experts in Korean society in future, so they will nurture new AI department, These all things sounds okay, but the problem is when we collectively are fascinated by this kind of social progress with AI and data, how much do we really know about the the meaning of social progress that will be achieved by AI and data? I think that's a kind of a critical question that we might want to have together. So to dive into the real contents here, I would like to show you some more longitudinal view about the life cycle of the data. We are very familiar with dealing with the data that are already collected for us, and we are trained to become an expert to analyze that kind of data in many different senses. However, behind the scene, many different things actually happen to make that data, and even before that. So first of all, there's a process we call generation, and then collection, processing, storage, management, analysis, visualization, interpretation. I think this is even quite simplified view, actually. So if we think about this each process one by one, then we realize that mostly researchers are focused on only a few parts of the whole life cycle of the data. For instance, we are interested in management, analysis, visualization, interpretation parts, which are mostly the latter part of the life cycle of data. Usually, academic researchers are accustomed to deal with the data that are already collected. In other words, the data that are already found to be important to be collected by somebody else. Very often, data collection takes a lot of resources. So the fact that the data is already out there means that somebody else already identified the importance of having that kind of data. So the researchers are actually dealing with the data that others are already intending to be used, okay? So for instance, if we think about some larger life cycle of data, we have to think from the question, who determines what kind of things are going to be measured and standardized to call it data? So the very first part of the data life cycle. So there are so many things happening in our society, and there are potentially countless kind of things that could be measured and stored and standardized. But only portion of that become something we can call as a data, and only portion of them become a thing that we interpret. So critical questions should begin from like who determines what is to be measured and standardized, and then there's a process like a processing and storage. Then the question is like with what formats and platforms will the data be processed and stored? Sometimes the data is disclosed in form of API. Sometimes the data are stored in form of just like a picture data somewhere stored in a server that nobody can approach. Sometimes the data is stored inside of the PDF document that nobody can really find. Sometimes data are just inside of a physical copy inside of the archive that nobody can read. Sometimes data are stored and standardized in so good way, but restricted access. So the problem of process and storage also raises the question like, what formats and platforms does the data have to be provided? And then later on, now it's a turn of the analyzers. Then there's a question like, who are intended analyzers of the data? What are intended purposes? For instance, when the data is formulated in very complicated form that is almost unreadable for people who do not have data science training, then who are intended interpreter of that? Who are intended analyzers of it? So the existence of data itself does not guarantee that everybody can use the data for their own good. So if you think about this whole bigger cycle, then now we are entering to the area that we need more critical social reflections upon the data as a social construction. So we think about the social construction. So I have this kind of picture to show you that there are so many things that we do not really know, and there's a social power there. And this is more related to the very first part of this data generation. Who determines what is to be measured and standardized? So we generally assume that we know what is happening in our society, and we also feel that most things happening in our societies are becoming a data, and that is not really true, because there are so different layers of what we do not know. Sometimes we do not know just completely, which means that we do not even know what we do not know. That's a complete ignorance. And somebody have to point out that this is what we do not know, and we want to know about that, right? And that is what we call non-knowledge, identification of what we do not know and telling that we actually have to know that. So converting something from nescience to non-knowledge takes power. And also, there are type of ignorance we can call negative knowledge. That is, okay, we know that we do not know about something, and then we collectively agree that we don't actually have to know about that. That is negative knowledge. It means that we also need power to convert negative knowledge to non-knowledge, saying that, okay, we don't know about this. And people say that we don't have to know about this, but we claim that we actually have to know this. So here, the critical reflection of the data requires us to think about how can we convert nescience to non-knowledge or negative knowledge into non-knowledge, and then ultimately converting non-knowledge into knowledge that we can all draw on. So I have several historical examples to introduce you today. And first, we begin from W.E.B. Du Bois. If you are interested in sociology, W.E.B. Du Bois is regarded as one of the pioneers in studying African American or Black people in America. And as you can see, he lived like a long time ago. And one of his most famous books is entitled Philadelphia Negro. And of course, here the Negro, the term itself did not have a negative connotation during that time. So I'm going to use the term Negro for the rest of my talk. So at the beginning of the book, he wrote that the Negro problem of Philadelphia, and he is saying that the most urgent problem in American society is the problem of color line, he said. So the problem of the racial disparity, problem of racial inequality is a social problem during the time, he claimed. So that was the beginning of 20th century. And people were hesitant about really talking about that. And then he continues that the student of these questions must first ask, what is the real condition of this group of human beings? So here, people kind of had an idea that the racial disparity is a thing. There must be something like a racial inequality in society, but nobody really thought that that is a type of the data we want to reveal. Nobody really assumed that that is a type of knowledge we do not know, but we want to know. And he is claiming here that we have to know the real condition of this group of human beings, meaning the life condition of Black American in Philadelphia, he said. So so what Du Bois did was that so he did not have enough resources. He actually failed in finding faculty positions even after getting PhD in Harvard. So he had to spend several years just doing his own research without any support. So he just walked around the Philadelphia area, several different places, knocked the door per each household, and asked the question about how many people do we have in your household? What is your annual income? How long? What was the longevity of your grandfather, grandmother? And what kind of diseases do you have? What kind of things do you eat every day? He collected all that kind of data just by himself, one by one. And he amazingly produced many different amazing data and visualizations. So here, I'm showing you some examples of his visualizations because here this is also a good example that sometimes visualization itself can be a very good political tool. So here, I'm not going to show you every detail of this visualization, but the commonality of that whole visualization is that they are very effective in revealing the fact that Black American and white American are so socially different in American society. So Black Americans, their industrial distribution, white Americans, industrial distribution, and we see that Black American, so many of them are working in domestic and personal services, whereas white Americans are more focused on manufacturing and mechanical industries. That also shows the occupational inequality in depending on their races. and also the income and expenditure distribution that also shows the status quo of the economic life of the Black American. And here, this is the example of the illiteracy rate in Philadelphia area. So the left picture tells that there's a growing pattern of the movement of the immigrants, Black immigrants from somewhere else. So the proportion of the Black American is increasing. However, at the same time, the literacy rate is not really increasing. Actually, the illiteracy rate is a very serious problem for Black American coming to the city. He shows that. So again, these whole things is not even a thing before it become a data. And it could be a social power that determines what is a deserving knowledge to become a data, and what is not really a deserving knowledge that is to become a data. And this is also the picture about the, this is another form of the diagram with the picture in the left here. So that tells the occupational distribution depending on white and Black. And also here, interesting thing is that we have another fraction of the graph that divides this occupational distribution by gender. So in the left column, the lower part here, we have a male and female. So it tells that rather than just aggregating every gender into the one picture, he divided the data into the set of the male and female. That also tells that like gender, he thought that should be an important variable in manufacturing this whole data. And that has a very explicit intention here, right? And this is about the longevity. This is also very effective visualization that appeals that Black American live shorter than white American. So Black American have higher death rate for every age period, and that is consistently higher than that of the white American. So this visualization is also a very good tool for revealing, not only for revealing the fact, but also for revealing the existing some social structure that is operating upon the life of Black American that could become a tool for collective behaviors. Now, another example comes from, again, early 20th century, which is from the commission we call Dillingham Commission. So Dillingham Commission was, this example also tells you the relationship between data and social good, especially what happens when the users of data want to say whatever they want to say, regardless of what kind of data do they collect. So Dillingham Commission was composed of a group of elite bureaucrats, I would say, administrators around Boston area. And they did the very meticulous studies on new immigrants of the US society back in the day. So here, new immigrants are distinctive from so-called old immigrants. So old immigrants came from France, UK, or Germany. But here, the new immigrants were coming from Italy and East European countries. And they did a massive survey about what is happening with those immigrants in US society. And they intended to produce policy outcome that they have to distinguish different types of immigrants. And they wanted to produce the data that new immigrants are kind of a lesser being than old immigrants. So they produced 41-volume, gigantic volume of study on immigrants, and they classified 20 different races, 20 different types of immigrants, like German, Hungarian, French, Italian, Southern Italian, Northern Italian, da-da-da-da-da. So they produced some restrictive policy suggestions on immigration, telling that we have to have some social restrictions on the immigration of so-called new immigrants. And interesting thing about this report, again, is that they already, it kind of feels like they already had an idea about what kind of conclusion do they actually want to make, even before they collect the data. So interestingly, conclusion and recommendations are all summarized at the beginning part of the volume 1. And the rest of the volume, people do not see the rest of volumes, right? They just only see the very beginning of the first volume and just pretend that they know everything. I think that is what they intended. So their conclusions are already in the volume 1. But if you see the more detailed, curated data and presented data in this book, you see an interesting mismatch between the data and what they claim. Here, the thing is that the data was not collected by themselves. They were just producer of the book. Data was actually collected by some middle-class managers who were intellectuals, who had a little political interest. So those middle-class intellectuals collected the data that actually does not really rigorously support what those commission members wanted to argue. But the commission members anyway argued what they wanted to argue. So we see very interesting mismatch between the data they have and the arguments. So some interesting mismatch between facts and message. Here, the example is that the report wrote that the Southern Italian miners were the most industrious of all races employed, and they were reported to work more steadily than either Russian or American workers. So here, this is a classification of different immigrants. These people work better. These people are more diligent. There are some even passages about how many cups of whiskey do they drink every day. And they tend to be more sober, they tend to be more drunken, so they tend to be better worker. There are many passages like that, but the data support for that all kind of claims are very shaky. So here they classify the different groups of people like efficient group and a progressive group, adaptability, tractability, industriousness. They made some hierarchical suggestions like who are better than whom. And again, those whole things are not really supported by data, but those things are just claimed by those commission members. And another example is like new immigrant as a class is far less intelligent than the old. Approximately 1/3 of all those over 14 years of age when admitted being illiterate. Racially, they are for the most part essentially unlike British, German, and other people who came during the period prior to 1880. So it is problematizing that those new immigrants are illiterate and they're all ignorant compared to old immigrants. However, the table is written here, and if you see this table, the difference here, the illiteracy rate is not that severe. I mean, they write in this report as if there's a significant differences. But here, if you see that the literary rate after several years, I mean, there's some differences, but it is not that severely different. But they just sound up as if there's a huge difference and there's a significant differences. Of course, the measurement of the significance itself, now we can do that with more advanced statistical tools. But here the point is that sometimes when the data is intended to be used for a particular purpose by a particular group of members, then the data itself does not guarantee a social good. Of course, there were some unintended consequences by having this kind of data, because Dillingham Commission members actually knew that what they want to say did not match with the data itself. So later on, if you see some history of the racism in the U.S. society, the elite members in U.S. society changed their strategy of the racial discrimination based on this kind of data reality. So in other words, depending on the intended audiences and users, data often serves the power. And of course, data itself has a power in itself, and it can produce some social outcome, but still, data itself does not change the society. So data do what it can do, but data itself cannot do everything by itself alone. I have some other cases, but I think I have to wrap up my talk. So takeaway is that data analysis is only a part of data life cycle. And therefore, data science might want to aim for some bigger picture, the birth of the data and the manipulation of the data, use of the data, and all kind of things. So the ultimate question should be, how can we collectively build an academic and civic community that creatively discover what to be discovered and curate and analyze such data for social good? So here we are dealing with bigger problem than just analyzing data meticulously. Here we have a task in front of us that is about how do you decide what you want to call as a data? How do you decide what are valuable things that should be measured and collected? How can we make this data to be used for the social good? How can we make this data ecology to be beneficial for civic community? That all kind of things should be raised to truly achieve the human-centered data science. That's what I want to say. Thank you so much.
And then we will have Professor Kim Jeon for his talk.
So again, it's the same theme, same topic, human-centered data science, but I'm taking a slightly different perspective. I think Professor Jeon comes more from the critical data science perspectives, like, asking critical questions about what is needed data, who nearly collects this, and what is the incentive structure behind these efforts. But I appreciate those questions, but I'm more practice oriented. What that means is, in the end, I want to solve a problem. I want to improve practice. And the part of the reason is because I work with government agencies, US governments, all level, federal, state, and local level. So we have actual problems. We need to actually solve those problems. So in the end, we need to do something. So that's the kind of motivation, kind of background. And I have two takeaways. Again, this is my training, so I always like just showing what's the key point here. So there are two takeaways if you don't have time. If you want to remember what I'm going to say about. So one is tech alone doesn't solve a social problem. So like we are having this amazing technology, for instance, we have this Zoom and distant communication and internet and everything. Otherwise, we cannot have this event. So I appreciate that we're having this technology, but does it mean that because we have the internet, because we have Zoom, can it solve education? That's not that simple. Can you reduce all those meetings and then having only very user-friendly essential ones? That's just not happening. So we know that tech is interesting and useful and it's important, but it doesn't mean that we can solve every single problem. But then what's missing? So I think most of the time solving a social problem is very hard. It's not easy. It's because we don't understand people, not technology. So like if you're having very bad Zoom meeting, it's not because Zoom is bad, because something is bad about the meeting. I think that's one example. So in the policy context, because I'm talking about the policy, I'm talking about changing the government, changing administrative process, changing policy experience. When I say it's about users, it's about people who are actually using the policy, trying to access the policy. So I want to clarify that. Those are the people that I have in mind. And human-centered data science, the part of the reason why you're having this event is that this is actually pretty popular in the US, but Korea. So my hope is that the part of the reason that I wanted to having this event with Jeon and also Byung-Gu Kim is that I want the people in Korea, whether in academic or academic institutions or government agencies, pay more attention to this issue. This is because this is not small issue. This is a big issue. So, for instance, in the slide, the first three human-centered data science. It's from Cecilia Anong. She's a professor faculty at the University of Washington in Seattle. It's an iSchool. And the HAI, Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence. This is a pretty famous center at Stanford. They produce annual report, which is very widely shared and making a lot of impact. And this one, data action, is from Sarah Williams. She's a faculty at MIT. So, and Berkeley, or you go to any school, any academic institution, like they have something about human-centered, whatever, social good, something. So this is a huge topic, and the part of the reason is that, this AI thing or data stuff, they are powerful. But if you watch the Spider-Man, you remember that the greater power comes with greater responsibility. So if you want to teach students data science, if you want them to be equipped with data and AI and new skills. And for example, Professor Jeon gave us like last week example, the Korean government now want to, I don't know, educate 1 million AI experts. Okay, great power. But how we can make them to be responsible? So imagine that like you have 1 million drivers out there, but they don't have any safety training. What's going to happen? Car accidents, and then innocent people get killed. So it's not a small problem. That's why I say it's not a small problem. The reason that we want to do human-centered data science is, first of all, because we want them to use this important technology responsibly. And second of all, like if we do if we do data science, we build new technology. What's the technology for? So Professor Jeon lays lots of interesting and important critical questions about the data generating process, who create this data, who define data. But what I want to, since I'm more applied, what I want to ask is, okay, we build this new technology, we use this new technology, but for whom? Who are our intended users, and how we can actually have them? So if you use this technology in the government, how we can actually change the government? And what do you mean by change the government? So we need to think about the end user. Here, the end user is the people who are using the government. What kind of things they're going to benefit from? So let's say Korean government like spending a lot of money and then doing new AI stuff. Who's going to benefit from it? And how we know it? Do we really measure this stuff? And do we understand that change? So enough of that motivation. So the picture that I'm showing here is obviously Olympic. The Olympic is over, so I'm not talking about Paris Olympics. It's just like I'm trying to underscore this theme: faster, higher, and stronger. That's what Olympic is about. And I think the way we think about the Korean government thinking about AI or technology in general is like, okay, how can you be more at the cutting edge? So how can you do better job so we can improve our score in the national competitiveness rankings based on AI or whatnot? So this is the global AI index, but I think there's a bunch of other ranking systems they are obsessed with. And my hot take is that, okay, these are good or great, but maybe we need to think more fundamentally about what's missing. And to me, what's missing is that there are two things we can do using data. So one is like, so I'm using a US example because like I said, I work with US governments. So to me, it's more a familiar example, and there's something that they're doing better. There's something doing terrible. I'm also happy to explain why they're doing something that they're doing terrible, but there's something they're good. So one example is, this is a base, so left side you see evidence, and the right side you see experience. So I know the audience. So given this audience, you guys are familiar with evidence-based policymaking. So if you improve policy, you want to base policy on evidence. So that's why schools like KDI teaching impact evaluation. That's why we are running a research method like causal inference and so on. And there's actually a government act in the US passed in 2018, Evidence-Based Policymaking Act, which is important because it creates mandate for government agencies, across federal agencies. So they need to have evaluation officer, they need to have a statistical officer, they need to have a plan for how they're going to evaluate their performance annually. And there is a inside the GSA, General Service Administration. So in Korean equivalent is 조달청, but it's actually the 조달청 is much higher authority and much larger organization. GSA is basically they buy everything for US government. That's what GSA does. And GSA has an agency called Office of Evaluation Sciences. It used to be inside the White House, and they are called nudge unit. They're doing behavioral science, but then they realize, oh, what the government needs is not nudging, not behavioral sciences. They want to do evaluations. So they become like GSA is or federal government's in-house consulting firm that provides evaluation expertise to other agencies inside the federal government. So that's what they do. So the one side is evidence. So if you're doing data science, you know that this is a part of the job that you want to do. You want to perform. I want to provide evidence. so that policymakers or some other decision makers, they can do some actions that can actually improve the outcomes. So that's something I think you guys are familiar. But how about experience? How many of you are familiar with, for example, user experience research? It's like a UXI, user experience research. So this is another big trend, and it's in the US policy making space. So in 2020, there's a Biden administration initiative on administrative burden reduction. So basically the argument is, okay, we are going to use social sciences, we are going to use behavioral sciences, we are going to use data as along with technology and design to improve the experience that people are dealing with governments, whether it's applying for benefits or just filling out the form or going to DMV and renewing your driver license or whatever. So that's 2020 and 2023. There was an executive order on federal customer experience, and also there's a White House institution called agency called so it's in the executive presidential office. That's called USDS, United States Digital Service. So their job is it's kind of similar to OES, Office of Evaluation Sciences. They work with other federal agencies so that they can improve their user experience. So that's what they do. So there are two pillars. One is evidence and the other one is experience. And so this is these two are separated, but they are not. I'm gonna show how we can combine them in the actual example. So this is a paper that I've been working on based on the project that I did at Corporate for America, where I used to work as data scientist. A problem known as food insecurity. So food insecurity is basically there's a lot of people in the United States who don't have adequate food access. So I'm gonna give you some numbers because we are talking about numbers. This is about data science talk. So there are, in the United States, there's a lot of people. There's more than 300 million people, about 250 million people in the US. But if you look at the number of households who are food insecure, meaning those are individuals or households don't have good access to adequate food. So there are 17 million households, 17. And so if there's a household, right? And each household having family members. And if you count those family members, that's gonna be 44.2 million people. So slightly smaller than South Korea population. And if you only count children because they are important for the future generation, that's going to be 7.3 million kids. So, and these are numbers, but you can imagine that there's a lot of families struggling to put food on the table. But what government is doing, actually government doing something. And so in this case, they have US government has a policy called SNAP Supplementary Nutrition Assistance Program. It's basically anti-poverty program, anti-hunger program. So if you're poor, if you're low income, and you can verify that you are low income, then government give you money so that you can buy food. So that's the idea. And then this is a take-up rate, meaning that if there's 100 people who are eligible to receive these benefits, how many people are actually receiving these benefits? And that's 83%, meaning 10 out of 8 people. And you can see there's a lot of variation. So in places like Wyoming, it's only 2 people. Actually not 2, it's 5 people, sorry. So 1 out of 2, so it's 5 people. And in California, it's about 7 out of 10. And similar in Texas, it's 7 out of 10. So it's not exactly aligned with partisan divide because California is a Democrat leaning and Texas is Republican leaning state. So that's interesting. Why that's the case? Why? This is basically free money. So if I'm poor, if I can verify I'm poor, government giving me money and I can buy food. And why poor people don't take this advantage of this system? And the reason is because there's a lot of hurdles you need to go through to receive these benefits. It's not like the money fall down from the sky. You actually need to fill out the form. And do you know how many hours or how many minutes do you need to spend to fill out the form? It's usually 1 hour. It's usually 1 hour. There are more than 100 questions they need to answer on the form. So it's not easy. And the other thing is that, so if you go to airport, so I think almost all of you went to the airport. If you go to the airport, you find something like this, security checkpoints. What does checkpoint do? So if you cannot pass the checkpoint, it's like Professor Jeon loves drinking, sorry to make the example, and then he brings some alcohol in his pocket, and I think he cannot pass the security checkpoint, right? Because that's not allowed to take. So that's checkpoint, and this administrative process also a checkpoint. So for the SNAP case, if you apply for the benefit, you need to take an interview within 30 days of application. And if you fail to show up, your case is denied. And so I work with several states in the United States, and we realized that, our team realized that this is one of the biggest problem. So if you look at people whose case denied, to system application denied, and then if you look at the administrative data, you can see that this is like one of the biggest reasons for denial. So I worked with Colorado state government, and 1 out of 2 people got their case, 1 out of 2 applicants got their case denied because of the because they missed the interview. So it's a pretty big problem. So we developed a pretty simple approach. So we talked to the people who apply for benefit. So we went to the state, we went to a bunch of counties, like WD was knocked the door. We didn't knock the door. We actually went to the office. So we went to talk to caseworker, and we shadow caseworkers. So we shadow how they worked, how they processing these cases. We interview people who apply for benefits, so how they apply for benefits, what's the problem they face. So basically we did ethnography, we did interview, we did qualitative work in addition to the quantitative analysis. And we found that they didn't understand they need to do the interview, first of all. And even they understood that, oh, I need to do the interview, they don't know how to do it. Because they need to fill out like fill out the form that has more than 100 questions, taking more than an hour, and in just one section, in the bottom, in the corner, it mentioned that you need to take the interview. So if you miss that information, you are screwed. So we decided very simple intervention. Okay, we understand problem because we talk to the people, we ask the right question. So when someone apply for the benefit, whether that's let's say I went to website, apply for the benefit, we send them 3 reminders. Like if you schedule an appointment at your dental clinic, maybe your dental clinic sends you a reminder, oh, you are scheduled to do cleaning and you need to show up. And so we do the same thing. We say that you are scheduled to do interview. This is a date, this is a time. We also work with the county government who's responsible for case processing. Okay, maybe you can do flexible interviews. So instead of scheduled interview, you can make the people just to call anytime they feel it's convenient. So what happened? We increased the interview completion by 11 percentage point. And then we increased the, we don't have the slide, but we also increased the approval rate by 6 or 7 percentage point. That's a huge improvement. And we did also survey. So we asked follow the people and then ask them, okay, so so like, do you know that the interview is required, and do you feel it's easy to do the interview? And those people who receive this reminder, they say, oh, I know the interview, and then I know how to do the interview. It's a much higher rate than those people who are in the control group. So this is an experiment. We also have a survey, and hopefully we can pass the INR, and then this paper gets published. So, and I have some follow-up papers I'm happy to discuss. So this is a human-centered data science approach, meaning that we have a theory, there's a burden, there's a barrier that people need to go through in terms of accessing public benefits. So that's a huge problem. And then we are our goal is trying to remove this burden or at least to make them more flexible or more informative. But there's a lot of different ways you can go about this. That's always a problem for researchers. Okay, you can do a bunch of different kinds of experiments, bunch of different kinds of surveys, bunch of different kinds of interventions, but what is a good one? And then the way we approach this problem is human-centered, because I think that the key question is that not like MIT educated, Harvard educated, Berkeley educated people just sitting around and then sharing their opinions. It's more like actually need to go to the field and talk to these poor people and understanding their problems by putting yourself into their shoes. And not only the clients who apply for benefit, but those people who are the what they call street-level bureaucrats, those are frontline workers who actually going to process these cases. And this kind of ethnographic or qualitative, and then combining that with quantitative analysis and doing this multi-method work is very important to ground the intervention in the real experience of people's everyday experience accessing government benefit and solving problem. So what we are trying to do, so if you ask me how you can change the world, I think there are two ways you can change the world. One is creating a positive feedback system, and the other one is breaking the negative feedback system, right? And that also applies to the public sector. So in the public sector, the sad thing is that, I mean, we talk a lot about how presidents, elected officials don't know about ordinary people's, everyday people's problems, right? We care about that. But the same problem goes to bureaucracy. If you talk to bureaucrats, some people understand, but especially if you're a media manager or if you're high up, you don't understand like what's the problem that people are having when they apply for benefit, trying to use public services. So we need to have people, these government workers, bureaucrats, make connections between. So we need to make connections between bureaucrats and citizens. That's one piece. And the other one is between agencies. So, so if you're poor in the US, there are lots of programs you can apply for. And one of them is a cash transfer. So you can get the cash from the government. But sometimes you need to show your birth certificate. But why? Why every single time you need to show your birth certificate? It's not cheap. It depends on the state, but it's like $15 or $20 to issue the document. $15 or $20. If agency just share that information, you don't need to ask them. You can just ask another department, okay, give me the document and I can verify it, and then this person can receive the benefits. So you can simplify the process. So that's why making connection between agencies is also important. So my key point is very simple: how you can do human-centered design and how you can actually apply to practice and research. Listen to people. Listen to people. I mean, like, so if there are some professors here, if I ask and demand one thing to my students, which is need to actually go to the field, talk to people who's actually experiencing the problem, and that's how you can define what's the problem. So we often say that, oh, the way you can write a paper is finding the gap in the literature. Finding the gap in the literature. So what these scholars are missing, what Berkeley educated, Harvard educated, Michigan educated people are missing. Yeah, maybe that's an important problem, but another way you can go about that is actually go to the field, talk to people, and see what we are collectively missing. Because we don't have their experience. So evidence matters, but experience matters, and how you can do human-centered data science by turning that experience into evidence. And that becomes very powerful. So the reason I do this kind of scholarship is that because I'm curious as an academic, as an intellectual, but there are some problems I want to solve. And to me, the way we can solve this problem using data science is that not like using the cutting edge technology, whether that's AI, generative AI, whatnot. It's more about, okay, I first need to listen to people. And then I can find define the problem. And if the problem isn't very defined, when the problem is very defined, then we can find the solution. And sometimes the solution is very simple, just like sending people 3 reminders. And that worked. Thank you.